Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. For those of you who are hanging around here this afternoon, I'm looking forward to our next chat as we continue our focus on, obviously, sustainability, but what we're going to be looking at is construction, and we know how much the city of Dubai has certainly changed over the last couple of years. It's one of the biggest trends in the GCC sector. In the UAE, the real estate industry has increased its focus on sustainable buildings to comply with the current green building regulations in the UAE, such as Abu Dhabi's Estidama Pearl rating system and the Dubai Green Building Regulations. With a growing footprint of buildings being developed under green building regulations, we're going to be hearing how the UAE will progress towards its goal of achieving net zero carbon buildings by 2050, something to look forward to. Joining me as the guest is the speaker, and I'm going to try and get this right, Kjetil Urheim. Am I close?
Lachlan, you're very good.
Thank you very much.
An equally difficult name as I do.
As the General Manager of Jotun UAE. Thank you very much for your time. Climate change, we know it's a reality, but why is reducing CO2 emissions, specifically in the construction sector, so imperative?
Well, when you look into the numbers of how much of the CO2 emissions that comes from construction, you'll be surprised. I was surprised. I researched it. I looked into the United Nations Environmental Panel, and they had calculated that 40% of world carbon emissions come from the construction sector. And I don't think many of us are aware, because we think about transportation and other things like that. But construction, well, it's huge. So the potential for saving is equally high. I mean, if you run a business where 40% of your share of your business is unprofitable, surely you would do something about that first.
And as the demand for sustainable buildings rises, you know, governments are obviously putting in rules, people are becoming more conscious. Do you foresee the green construction becoming increasingly profitable in years to come?
I think it has to be in order to facilitate the change. And I think we need to develop solutions that have benefits that the end users want. The end users, the developers, the marketplace, the investors, and the regulatory bodies. And I would like to mention 3 examples, if I may. Sure. Thinking about Norway, the ambassador is here still, thank you. We have had a formidable change in the transportation industry. We used to rely on fossil fuel cars, but as of June 2021, 80% of new cars in Norway are electric cars. So we shouldn't talk about Tesla, but the regulatory body, the Norwegian government, subsidizing and taking away all the, in Norway, cars are taxed by 100%. I know that's difficult to believe in the UAE where there's no tax. But taking away that tax, of course, people run to the change of buying electric cars, but only because the cars themselves have such great benefits to the users. The second example I'd like to use is from our own company, from Jotun. We have painted around 1,000 of the largest vessels in the world with marine paints. And the savings of the fuel for those large ships in itself, and the lesser carbon emissions to the atmosphere, equals the entire CO2 emissions from the country of Norway for a whole year. Just by painting the big ships of the world, you take out an entire nation's carbon dioxide emissions. A fantastic achievement, and it proves that if you have enough benefit for the fuel owners in fuel costs, for the ship owners when it comes to saving fuel, they gladly invest. It's a plus for the environment, for the business, for all of us. And the last example, if I can. I'm sure you remember in 2014 when Sheikh Hamdan, the Crown Prince of Dubai, was high up in Burj Khalifa with the flag when we were awarded the Expo. The coating on this spire is a technology which Jotun has used on the oil rigs in the North Sea since the 1970s. It was out there for more than almost 50 years when the oil rigs were decommissioned, and the paint was still intact. So innovation and transfer of technology from one sector to another is a fantastic potential for creating green effects and an environmental friendly solution.
I think they're three three great examples and three great ideas, and I think that, for a lot of people, when they were setting goals, I think that Norway and many other Scandinavian countries have always sort of been at the forefront in really challenging the status quo and challenging people's rules. But when we look here at the UAE, how would you say the UAE is encouraging the construction of greener buildings? But what I would perceive as being even harder, how do you think they're working to retrofit some of those older buildings?
Well, we heard my colleague from the construction industry talk about the Dubai Green Building Council and the SDDAMA, which is the Abu Dhabi equivalent of the Green Building Council in Dubai. And they have put in place regulations that we will follow with regards to especially limiting, for example, dark colors, because we know that dark buildings will get heated up and they consume more energy for the air conditioning. So these things are coming, and we are developing continuously paint that will make sure that the buildings don't heat up as much. We have the cool shades, which is from our powder coatings, and we have the Color Extreme, which is our Jota Shield exterior paint. So innovation will make sure this happens. The race is on. And being transparent when it comes to your life cycle analysis, your environmental product declarations, making it known to the customers who are coming from the investors, from the developers, to meet these targets. So the more competition we get, the faster the transformation will happen.
Yeah, it's the old business rule, competition, good competition is what drives you. Good competition is what challenges you to improve. So I think you made a great example of that. And you also mentioned there about, the colour of some of the buildings. Dark colours obviously require more energy in order to be cooled. So going through that, how much of an importance would you put on different paints and coatings when it goes to the contribution of meeting those standards? How important is that?
I think that's a good question, because it's another interesting fact. Because when you look at the cost of erecting a building, only 2% of the cost is the paints. But when you look at the systems, the LEED and BREEAM, and all the other systems which certifies your building, whether it's green or not, 27% of the points comes from paints. So, it's very hard to become green without investing in a green painting solution. So any paint manufacturer these days, when you go to their website, they will have a green solution, a green system for your buildings. Whether it's whatever kind of building you want to erect, it will be there. And I think this transparency, this innovation, this need to win, because it is about winning the green race for us as manufacturers, because we know the investors want it. And Dubai and Abu Dhabi, with, for example, the new DEWA headquarters, which is a net zero building when it comes to water and energy, is leading the example. Same with the Bin Rashid Solar Innovation Park, which is the biggest in the world. Fantastic, leading the way, inspiring us to follow.
Why do you think buildings are generally dark colours? Is it because people are worried about how light colours will age and it's maybe perhaps more effective to clean as time goes on? Or is there a reason why manufacturers have always gone with the darker colours, or they can't make everything light?
The paint manufacturers would prefer the lighter colours because they don't fade. If you want a dark color, the risk of it fading, and we are here to beautify Dubai. So generally that's a tougher task for us to complete. But I guess this is a lot about taste, fashion. What's beautiful?
Yeah, exactly. Specifically, I know in a country where I come from, Australia, it's the same problem here with the, the fading with the sun is so common. It would make it even harder to have a lighter colour building here. So I understand that. Thank you very much for your points today. I certainly appreciate it. Could you please give a round of applause for Kjetil Urheim, the General Manager of Jotun UAE? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lachlan. Thank you, Lachlan.